15,
well?
so could I
That's in full swing, isn't it?
I'd like to welcome you all to this.
Dragged Darren along.
Excuse me?
Okay, is that quite recent? Or
We've started. Thank you. If I could wish you all a happy new year, relatedly. Welcome you to this meeting and start with item 1, which is apologies for absence. Do you have any apologies for absence?
Chair, we've had apologies from Mr. Salim Sheikh.
Are there any other apologies? Okay. And the reason that Stella is over there is that we are going to have, we're having a movie night. So, you know, there's no expense there here. I mean, Mark may have denied us a cup of tea when we came here in the Airbnbs, but we're going to try and make up for it with a bit of entertainment. And that's the reason that Stella is over there, because she's working the equipment. Item 2 is declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations? Okay, item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting. Are they approved? Item 4 is Croydon and Wandsworth Personal Independent Payment Assessment Centres. And this is a report that Lila and her colleagues have put together. We're very grateful to them. This is an issue in which this committee has demonstrated a very clear interest, and I see it as actually defending the interests of the residents of Merton, which is something that I think we all subscribe to. So Lila, over to you.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to everybody. I just wanted to briefly summarise the situation at the moment with PIP and then hand over to my colleague Michael. So as things stand, we've had a bit of a deep dive into the latest sort of statistics and data around personal independence payments, and we're really happy actually because there's been a slight improvement in the number of people who are receiving their reward and are getting the same or an increased rate in the changeover from DLA, which is the old award, to PIP, the new award. So that's really positive, firstly, but there's still a way to go because the rate of Merton residents losing out is still higher than the national average, so there is still work to do around that. And in addition, there's 1,800 people who are still waiting to be transferred from DLA to PIP. And at the current rate, we think that around about half of those people are likely to face issues in the transfer, either losing their benefit or getting a lower award, which can have lots of knock-on effects. And as we've told you before, there's a minimum of 20 hours of work per person to go through to support them through to an appeal. And in addition to that, there's around about 2,000 people a year making new PIP applications who also need support. So you can see that there's a significant issue, and in the past we've highlighted that there were issues with overbooking practices at the assessment centres. We're waiting to hear back from that following the last meeting, and also issues around the quality and accuracy of assessments. And I mean, just last week we supported a disabled person who had got 0 at his assessment 9 months ago, and just last week 1 at tribunal, and that shouldn't still be happening. And actually there's an overturn rate at Sutton Tribunal of 70%, and I think that just shows that there's still something really quite wrong with the process. But today's focus really is on the accessibility of the centres, which was the third key issue that we highlighted, and which Michael just wanted to say a few words about.
Before you start, Michael, can I welcome you to this committee?
Thank you. Yeah. You'll see on the film in a minute that we visited the centre for assessment in Wandsworth and Croydon, because they're the main centre of people from Merton for centre. Neither of them is ideal, broken terms of rehabilitation, but also in terms of their facilities. The Croydon centre is particularly small and only has one interview on the ground floor. There are 4 others, but on the wall up and down. But on the more positive note, there is a lead centre that should be opening towards the end of January in Croydon, again just off the Curly Way. The facilities at Wandsworth are much better, although it is a very difficult place to find. Once in the yes, there's very poor signposting. And we also think we need to consider back in October, November, I had a problem where the one toilet for people visiting the centre wasn't working, and for 2 or 3 weeks people would have to go back over the road into a shopping centre, find a cafe, pay for something in the cafe if they needed to use the toilet. And it seems to us that they really need to consider whether it's appropriate to stay open in those circumstances. These issues are all really important because it's really in the nature of the type of people who are going to have assessment, that they're going to have difficulty getting to the centres. We have sent out recommendations to DWP and to APPENDIX, and I think we are getting a bit of a dialogue going, and in particular for the centre in Croydon, we are hoping that the arrangements there will be far more sensible, but I think there are often going to be issues for people about travelling through and actually finding the centre.
Thank you. There's a couple of questions that come to mind. Did they give you the opportunity to have a look at the proposed new premises?
No, but we will be looking at it in a couple of weeks. I think they still had to confirm the arrangements, and I think once they have access, then I should be going to have a look at it.
And you'll report back when you've had that?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. And the other question that comes to mind is, we had this discussion when we first reviewed this whole area of work, and I think many members of the committee expressed the desire for people to be seen closer to home. And I believe it was Maria Monaghan from the assessors, Atos, who indicated that they were discussing the possibility of people being able to use sort of voluntary sector premises for these assessments, and these would be places that would be closer to them, they would be familiar with, and therefore not as stressed, because they wouldn't have had the difficulties that some people experience of, the parking, finding a place that you're not familiar with, if the parking is some distance and you have mobility difficulties, actually getting in on time and not missing your all of that brings its stresses. Has there been any progress with that idea, and are there voluntary sector premises that would be suitable in Merton? Because to me that would seem like a really good step forward if we can achieve that.
It certainly hasn't come up in any discussions that really tried with them, and it's not something that we're aware of.
I guess maybe it's a question for the estates team, because there is certainly a voluntary sector property, but it's property that belongs to the council. where we're based is council property. Although that's not got great parking anymore, but there are certainly venues around the borough that they've not been in talks with anyone that we're aware of.
Okay, but I think there's no point in talking about that and making arrangements if it's a non-starter with us. Seems to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Well, perhaps we could get in touch with them and ask if they would be willing. Sorry, Hannah.
Sorry, just trying to remember back to the last conversation we had around the use of other premises, and my recollection is there was an issue around the use of their IT system, from what I can remember. So I think it's worth actually checking back with them. There's something about having the use of that mobile technology to be able to move wider, and I think that was posing a problem around data protection, but also just the fact that they don't have mobile equipment in terms of the assessment process from memory.
I mean, they do home visits, so it's whether they want to scale any of that up, really. That would be. But I think these are not questions that we can answer. But yeah, I can absolutely see the value of nearer centres, and I think that's what the film will show as well.
So shall we have a look at the film
Yes,
now?
let's do that.
My recollection of our last meeting was that we did raise this issue about pop-up assessment centres, because as Hannah said, we got pushed back on IT security. But then the challenge was made about them taking mobile computers to do the at-home assessments, and they kind of were a bit ducking and diving as to why they couldn't use that mobile assessment equipment in a pop-up centre. I think that was really where it was left at the last meeting, that we were hoping that they would come back and investigate the use of the equipment for home visits in pop-up centres.
Thank you. God bless your memory. Hannah, could you take this up?
Yeah, I can certainly ask them an update. Can I just ask, they did do the visit with you?
No.
Did they undertake the audit with you?
No.
Okay, I thought we agreed again at the last meeting that they would be present at the audit, because that's where we could challenge some of the findings.
But you'll see on the film, they wouldn't let us take photos.
Right. Action.
We've been looking at the centres where disabled people from Merton have to go to be assessed for their personal independence payments. That's the allowance from the government that helps cover the extra costs of disability. There isn't an assessment centre in Merton. Sometimes people have had to go a really long way to places like Vauxhall and even Barking, but they mainly have to go to either Croydon or Wandsworth, so these are the two centres we've had a look at. This is the Croydon Centre. It's not very big, and it's on a back street in central Croydon. They have put these signs on the door, but it doesn't really stand out. Gina travelled to the centre from Mitcham on the tram. Some of the people we spoke to said they found it difficult to find the centre.
It was really hard to find. The sat-nav takes you to the wrong place.
Gina also found it difficult.
We were supposed to get off at Church Road, but we had to get off at East Croydon to change, and we're not sure exactly how to get there because I think we have to double back. So instead, I've got my Google map, and we're going to try and get there on wheels. And it does say it's going to take 14 minutes to get there, so it might take a little bit longer, but hopefully we won't get lost. It's nearly 11:15. So, it's 1 hour and 45 minutes it's taken us to do this.
Michael came from Mitcham by car. It wasn't too bad, but it can be very busy. Getting parked can be difficult in Croydon too, as it's a busy shopping area. Michael found an accessible parking bay, but it was a fair way up the road, and the pavements were quite difficult on his mobility scooter. There are parking spaces in front of the centre, but none of these are reserved for blue badge holders. The nearest blue badge bay is around 160 metres away across some very difficult pavements. The door to the centre is narrow and probably not wide enough for someone with a big wheelchair or scooter. There is a toilet, but again, it would be very tight for someone using a larger wheelchair or scooter. We weren't allowed to take pictures inside the centre. The waiting area is small, but there would hopefully only ever be 1 or 2 wheelchair or scooter users in there at once, as there's only one interview room on the ground floor, and there isn't a lift for the upstairs rooms. From what we found out, the staff work hard to make sure people know about this before they come, but it does mean people have to wait longer for an assessment if they need the downstairs room. We also noticed that the downstairs interview room isn't very private. If you're sitting in the waiting area by the door to this interview room, you can hear what people are saying. This is the Wandsworth Assessment Centre. Getting there by public transport isn't bad if buses are accessible for you, but it's not great if you need to use the train. Gina couldn't get here as she's not allowed on the bus with her mobility scooter, and it would have taken at least 2 hours to get here by train as there's no step-free station nearby. Michael drove again. This took under half an hour, but Wandsworth can be very busy in the morning and late afternoon. Again, it's near a busy shopping area, so parking can be difficult. There are some accessible parking bays, but you are lucky to get a space, and if you get one, you have to cross a very busy road. There is a crossing a little further up the road, but you have to go into the road to get to it, and the pavement on the other side has been damaged by building work. There is a multi-storey car park opposite the assessment centre, but parking means a long and confusing trek through a shopping centre to get back to the assessment centre. Finding the assessment centre from the street is very difficult. We spoke to a few people who were coming out from their assessments, and they all said it was hard to find their way in from the street.
We had the map, but it was hard to find the centre. We had to keep asking people for directions. The signs are a lot better now, but it's still difficult. Getting here from Wimbledon was easy enough, but finding the centre after I was dropped off was pretty hard.
Ironically, as you search for the PIP Centre, you go past a centre run by the Shaw Trust, which helps disabled people with employment. It looks like they've had some bother with people looking for the PIP Centre. Facilities and access in the centre seemed to be good, with everything on the ground floor, and the people we spoke to said staff were helpful. But getting to the intercom and through the security doors is a little awkward. Having an assessment is a hard experience, so it shouldn't be made worse by having a difficult and stressful journey. So here are a few of our top tips for improving accessibility in the centres. Have parking nearby. Have accessible parking bays, particularly close. Have clear signage, especially from surrounding public transport stops and also in surrounding streets. Assess the surrounding area and report any issues with poor pavements. Ensure that there are automatic entry doors to the centre and good space in the waiting area. Make sure there's specialist seating available for people who need it, and have a fully accessible toilet, ideally a changing places toilet. Have an induction loop at the reception area and in the interview rooms, and have visual fire alarms. And also have soundproofed interview rooms.
So, thank you for that. Questions, comments?
I think my comment would be, I almost think it's worth putting down a motion of some kind that APPENDIX be required to attend and to answer, A, for their prevarication in not going further on pop-up centres, which clearly, that Stephen was recalling, they were saying, oh, we can't do it because of the IT security, but they've clearly got the technology to be mobile. And secondly, I think it's down to them to answer the fact that they did not accompany you as they said they would on this audit. What was the reason for that? But I think more importantly, the solution, and there are clearly some issues there, serious issues over accessibility, which are quite inappropriate given what these centres are for. I think they should be required to attend and answer for this and to come up with proposals for pop-up centres within the Merton area, given that there are certainly feasible solutions. What do we say to that? We think it's worth a motion? We require ATOS to attend at the next scrutiny panel? I'm going to propose it.
I think that's unanimous. Well, is there anyone opposed?
Not opposed, but I just wanted to know whether this is also sent out, so that they're aware of the issues that you found in the audit.
We've sent them the written audits, and we are sending them the film. But I mean, the easiest way to do that, we need to load it onto our YouTube and then give them the link, I think. No, but in fairness, I mean, they got the audits on the 20th of December, because obviously we've sort of worked quite quickly to put everything together, but you had the Christmas break in between. So, and as Michael was saying earlier, they have been they've indicated that they're happy for us to go and look at the new centre. The question then, I suppose, is whether they are going to implement any of the suggestions we've made, some of which are quite straightforward, like better signage in Wandsworth. I don't think it's going to be that difficult to get that done, and will likely make quite a big difference.
Is that all that we recorded? Yes. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Can I just clarify whether, did you ask them to accompany you, or and they refused, or did you just turn up?
I think, Stella, you were in communication with them, weren't you? So I don't know if...
Yes, Chair, I emailed them and asked and said that these were the dates that we were hoping to come along and if they could attend. And they just asked for clarification about whether it's a formal visit which would need to go through their clearance process, and then you'd have access to some of the back office, or if it was just in the public areas. And because of the time frame, I think we wanted to proceed with the visit, so we just went for the informal avenue.
But they were given the opportunity to come along in any event?
Yes.
What reason did they give for not being allowed to take photographs? Were there people in there, or was there a reason?
Do you remember, Stella? It was more about it was more about just that they would have to clear that with somebody higher up in order to allow us to do that. That was what they said, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, because I think it all seems that's right. The staff that run the centre that we spoke to on the day, and we didn't make any prior arrangements, so they weren't aware of us coming, so they just said that. The blanket policy of no exposure, and probably also look on then of any type within the centre.
The issue was also that, particularly at Croydon, it's run by a third party. So it's like, DWP have subcontracted to ATOS, and then ATOS have subcontracted to whoever PFAS are. So it starts to get quite difficult to hold people to account, because it's always somebody else's problem, if you like.
Well, that's what the DWP do, is they push push it on to.
So how can we make sure that we get your suggestions across to the new Croydon Centre? What steps have you taken to make sure that happens? Is there any way that we can help?
we're in touch
Sorry,
with,
she forgot to do this.
we're in touch with the people that are still working on the setup of the new centre. And also we will be going to see hopefully in the next few weeks.
Steve?
I appreciate you mostly talking about the centres and the physical difficulties of access, but Lyle also mentioned the business about the appeals and 70% of appeals still being upheld. I'm just wondering, is there anything or something we should be doing to indicate that we don't regard this as satisfactory and that there should be better training of the people who are doing the assessments so that they get it right first time and there isn't the need to rely on the appeals process to such an extent?
Well, I think when they were here, and they actually brought, I believe his name was Miguel, the assessor who came on one position. Yes. And we were making that point and asking how much appeals cost. Because, you know, if the appeals involve panels, don't they? There's there's a legally qualified chair, and then there are two others, a bit like a magistrate's court, a panel of three. All of that costs money, and if that proportion are being overturned, then, you know, why can't they get it right first time and have better training? And the questions that I was asking was, you know, is there feedback to the people doing the assessments about the eventual outcomes of the appeal? Because, you know, good management would suggest that if you've got somebody who's consistently getting it right, that person should be telling the others how to achieve those standards. And if there's somebody who's consistently getting it wrong, then clearly we'll give them support and extra training, but ultimately they may not suit the right kind of role. And that's basic stuff, isn't it? We all know that that's kind of what we were doing when we were signing out leases for the DWP. But, you know, I was very taken with the idea of if there was skin in the game, I think I used. In other words, if you get it wrong and it's overturned on appeal, then you actually pay a penalty. And I think that would have a marked effect on the performance of people doing the assessment.
Thank you. Firstly,
I was about to say yes, Rebecca.
oh,
No, your sign.
that was mine. Sorry. Sorry. Apologies for being slightly late to choose when stopping at Tooting Broadway. On that particular point, I'm pretty sure the question was asked last time, and again I'm going to take on my memory of last meeting. The person from the assistance provider last time said that it's basically blind. They do all the assessments, send them up, and they're not told even how many are on appeal, and certainly not the detail of which members of staff are appealed against more often or less often. And so the people doing the assessments don't even have that information to look at, and that's partly to do with their contract with the DWP, that information isn't fed back down to them. So they conduct, say, 100 assessments, send them all off, and they're not even told how many of those are appealed against and how many are successfully appealed against. It's just completely blind from their point of view. I believe that was what they told us at the last meeting, and that's probably wider than just this to do with the contract between the DWP and the provider, which is a national contract, which is probably something that needs to be raised at a national level.
Any other questions? Comments? You talked about a local resident who had recently had a decision overturned on appeal after 9 months. What happened during that period? Did they lose their benefits? And if so, what kind of difficulties did that cause?
Yeah, they had quite a complicated situation because I think they hadn't started the transfer from DLA to PIP within the window. It's quite a short window that you have to send off your forms, and if you don't have support to do that, that could be quite difficult. So they then did have a gap in their benefit for quite a long period. They were also experiencing issues with ESA at the same time, so it was very stressful, and they did have to go and use health services and that kind of stuff as a consequence really of the stress and anxiety of the whole situation. So there's a clear and definite knock-on effect. There are very long waits. In previous cases that we've had in the past, the wait has been so long that people have lost their car, because when you have the hire rate, you can lease a Motability car, but actually when that's reassessed, you've only got, I think it's a 26-week period where you can kind of hold on to it while you're waiting to find out if you can appeal. But the appeals process is actually much longer than 26 weeks, so people are losing their cars. So we've had a number of cases like that where the period of the wait is just really quite damaging. But the courts are, the tribunals are completely full, so it's really difficult to speed up the process, and because of this sort of reasonably new mandatory reconsideration process that DWP insists on, which is basically you're saying to them, we think you've got it wrong, can you look again? And they look again, and 80% of the time, that's their target by the way, they're saying, no, we were right. And then it goes to appeal. All it is a delay in the process, which makes everything sort of much more stressful for people.
If the appeal is successful, do they then have the money paid back for the period that they've lost out?
Yes, you get back payment then, and that actually can create other knock-on issues, because some of the people that we work with might not have sort of very strong budgeting skills, and so that can a big chunk of money like that can come with its own problems as well.
There was one case that you reported right at the beginning of this, of somebody who was turned down, and on the day, if I'm remembering this correctly, on the day they heard that their appeal was successful was the day that they were made homeless.
Yeah, they were. They're still engaged with our service. So this was a number of years ago now, because this is obviously an issue that we've been raising for some time. They are now housed, but one of the problems that we're coming across is that the issue with PIP is not just the fact that in the transfer from DLA to PIP so many people are being kicked off the benefit. The issue is also that people are being reassessed at a rate that's really far too frequent, and quite often as well they'll be being reassessed frequently for ESA at the same time. So we might be supporting people who over a 3 or 4 year period are having 4 or 5 assessments for the same benefits over and over, and they're stuck in a loop of appeal. And there certainly have been cases where people have won their appeal, but because the reassessment date is set from when you first apply, you might only have the benefit for 3 months before you're called for another assessment, and the whole cycle starts again. And it's very damaging for people, because it means they don't have very much stability in their lives. They don't have that financial security or stability, so it's very difficult to get on with the rest of their lives really, and just the business of living and sort of taking care of themselves. So it's a cycle that is really unhealthy, and in terms of an agency like ours and other agencies in the borough trying to support people, it's really challenging, because you just see sort of the knock-on effect if people don't have the support to fight it, but then the amount of resource and time that it takes organisations to support people through that is really, it's obviously completely worthwhile, but it's really, really labour intensive.
Okay.
I think one of the difficulties we've got here is we're not the kind of authorising body, so I've been desperately thinking of what we can actually do that might improve things. And the only thing I've so far come up with is that maybe we can pass a motion to ask our own council to use its good offices and soft power to persuade Croydon Council and Wandsworth Council that they must put blue badge parking bays adjacent to, as close as possible, to the two PIP assessments in Croydon and Wandsworth.
You can certainly do that. I wouldn't have thought that would be a problem. I mean, you can't compel them, but we can ask, certainly.
One thing, Chief, I don't know if these facilities, are they permanent or are they?
Well, the one in Croydon's moving,
Temporary.
They're keeping it, they're just having a new, better one as well.
I was thinking that you were maybe going to suggest asking our MPs to take some of these matters up with the Secretary of State, the new Secretary of State, who has made some very interesting decisions very recently. So, and if it were the two Merton MPs raising the issues at our request, then it wouldn't be seen as some kind of political game playing, but actually genuine concern about local residents. And when we first started this, and there was resistance from the DWP to attend our meetings and actually make themselves accountable, we did involve the MPs, and that's what got them to the table. So that may be.
Yes. Yes.
I'm happy to talk to Warren, and I'm sure one of our colleagues can.
Stephen's remit is aligned to health, and he has a connection through to Ms. Rudd,
Okay.
DWP, that's for sure.
Can we explore that avenue as well?
So we have those as motions that we can take?
Well, I'm not sure we need. Again, I don't sense any resistance to that. I think it's just making use of the various channels open to us. And I would have thought that would come up. Well, let's just say, I mean, can we ask this committee if it would support such an attempt?
Definitely. I just wonder if it lends strength to the asking of the question if we say that the Scrutiny panel has put down and passed a formal motion that this needs to be attended to, rather than just
Let's say we
have a
passed
quiet
it.
road.
Let's say we passed it unanimously,
Yes,
unless
yes.
anybody says no.
So that's agreed unanimously.
Okay.
And then two separate blue badges.
Blue
One
badges.
is the MP liaison.
Yeah.
Very good.
All done on that one? Thank you. Item 5 is the business plan for 19
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I don't have a film to take you through, but what you did have, which landed on your doorstep, unfortunately after Christmas, is an horror movie. Was an episode of an information pack, which does set out some of the information which I'll go through at a later stage. So the paper that you have in front of you is an update of what went to Cabinet on 10th of December, setting out the approach to our budget and how we were closing the gap, the latest information that we've had, some information around our council tax base, so some good news around our council tax base that has increased, and also our collection rate. We are increasing the sterling work being done by staff within the council tax team. We showed the progress then on the savings from the targets that have been set in the September meeting, and there are proposals in front of you within the pack totaling £9.7 million. So quite a way towards the gap, but still we have a gap remaining. And as at the end of December, we were showing a gap by 22-23 of £8.8 million.
We also have within the papers an update on the capital programme, so that will be different from what you saw at your previous panel. Very little for this actual panel to look at, but there are some wider issues there around various other services. So probably the same facilities grant is the one that impacts on your service users mainly. And then there's also the investment strategy as well. Within the actual information pack that you've got all of the savings. So the savings which went to the October Cabinet and on to Scrutiny and the new proposals, including the replacement savings as well. You have the draft quality assessments, and we have produced on page 63 a summary showing each assessed draft quality assessment and the outcome of those, to help you and give you some guidance on where the more challenging ones may be, or where some of to focus your attention and to draw your attention to those. We also have draft service plans, and we do actually have for you tonight in A3 and in colour. So they weren't available for some of the panel members last night, so apologies for that. And that will bring together the key inputs, key outputs for the service at the divisional level. It will also bring together and detail all of the current savings and all of the new savings. So it gives you a flavour of the pressures and challenges within the area and on a complete basis, as well as the performance indicators and details of budget, both past and future. And then we have departmental budget summaries, again showing the situation from 1819 to 1920, split between inflation and other variations, along with some staffing details as well. So what we're trying to do is to give you some background information to then assist you when you look at the detail of the savings, to then see in the service plan what impact are these savings having, how deliverable are they, and certainly when you look at we do an analysis of each type of saving to say whether it's going to be income, efficiency, staffing. The majority of the savings out of the 9.6, just under half are from income. So just to draw your attention to that. I think you'll be going through the detailed savings, so Hannah and Don will be able to answer questions on those, but happy to answer any questions on the overall budget and any capital as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Can we ask questions, like an overall question about the whole process of this? Is that appropriate now?
Caroline is here.
So my main concern is that there is quite a few reviews, and how many reviews and how many bodies will be doing those reviews worries me, because of the time that we will have to scrutinise it. Will there be any time to scrutinise all these? Will there be time for us to assess whether this is a suitable saving or not? That's what I'm concerned about.
So each at the front, we've got which saving is going to which panel. So we had the first panel last night, tonight we've got the children's, and then we've got the commission. And some, depending on the chair of the commission, maybe they'll be able to go back over some of the savings from the panels as well as the savings particularly for the commission. And then feedback from each of the panels goes to the commission to then feedback to cabinet. So you had sort of some of the opportunity at the first round of scrutiny. You've got the opportunity now to raise things, and you could also, depending on what you want to do with this panel, feedback to the commission. So this is the process that we have in place. So we feel by going, depending on the level of detail you want to go into tonight, that's your chance to really scrutinise and go through the data.
It's only tonight that we have the chance to scrutinise all of it.
But yes, for the savings for here, yes.
Any other questions or comments? Anna, would you like to contribute?
So I don't have anything to add to Caroline's introduction, but quite happy to go through the savings and take any questions. I've got John Morden, Assistant Director, here as well. So quite happy to go through any level of detail required.
I've got quite a few questions on detailed proposals, say what, are we at that stage?
Well, I'm just seeing whether there's anyone that can contribute to the kind of background before we go into that particular central ones. So, would you like, I mean, probably the best we could do is ask your questions, and then if anyone's got issues that they want to raise with anything you've not covered, they can come in and talk about it. So, Steve.
It's probably best then if we actually start on page 28 to go through, and then that they give some councillors the opportunity to make sure that they raise their questions. And I suppose if there are potentially still questions that you may have afterwards, then clearly there is some time before the commission if you want to raise those questions and rather hang on myself.
Okay, so what's your first one?
Well, by good fortune, it is on page 28. It seems to me that this is about the introduction of a visit monitoring system. And the baseline budget is 94, and the saving for next year of 11, and then 78 in the following year. But this also seems to be connected to the replacement saving on page 42. So we seem to have the 29 saving in 1920.
So that's CH88.
Yes. On page 42.
Yep.
So my first question is simply, well, what is it going to be in 1920? Is it 11 or 29? And if it is 29, does that mean the 78 saving disappears?
So I think it's probably the simplest answer I can give you to that is the actual, it's split. Sorry, it is split. So you've got a 29k replacement in that and 11,000 of a new saving. That's why you're seeing it twice. So 40,000 in total.
So 40,000 in next year.
In 1920.
Yeah. And 78,000 in 2021. So does that mean that the total savings are more than the baseline deficit?
Sorry, can you just
Well,
go through again, please? So,
yeah, the baseline deficit I think is 94,000.
yes.
And the savings in 1920 are 40,000.
Yes.
And the savings in 2021 are 78.
Yeah.
So that's 118,000 savings out of a budget which only appears to have a deficit of 94,000.
I think that the 2021 of 78,000 is made up to meet some of the shortfall in previous. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yeah.
So it's not that we're going to overachieve on the saving. So some of the care monitoring system came in from we've gone back probably. We need to take you back a little, which was to 2017-18, where it did not release some of the savings. So that's where it makes up that shortfall.
The system itself is a very good idea for the system. So if we commission 30 minutes of care, and the provider, this carer is supposed to stay for that 30 minutes and provide the care. If they don't stay, and they only stay for 20 minutes, we only pay for 20 minutes. So that's what the system allows us to do. It was implemented, but it was only, we've got about 20 home care providers. It was only implemented with some of our providers. The plan is that we implement it with other providers over the next couple of years, so that all of our main providers are using this common system. Does that sort of explain what it's for?
I'm interested to know if you. Yeah, I'm interested to know you said it's been implemented with some providers already and we're rolling it out to other providers. Can you report on the success of the implementation so far with the providers we have implemented it with?
From memory, we have achieved savings on the original saving, which was CH70 in the
So I think there's two things. It's a very easy system to monitor because once you implement it and your home care providers sign up to it, so the name of the system is called CM2000 without boring you completely. It's a rollout right across London. The very minute your home care provider signs up to it, they get paid for just the number of hours that they're providing. Whereas under the old system, it went back to your original contract, which was kind of that signed service level of agreement that you would visit 3 times a day for 1 hour a day, and if you visit for less, it wouldn't make a difference, you'd still get your 3 hours paid. So it's more about tightening up the system. So the monitoring is the hours that you do is what you're paid for. And if you do less, you don't get paid for less. That's kind of the beauty of this system. It's a very live online system of when care is provided.
Thank you, I understand that. I think my question was, if we rolled it out amongst some providers already, and then we estimate that we'll get further savings by rolling it out amongst the other providers, having the savings, if we have achieved the savings over the ones we have rolled it out, we can be very confident we're going to achieve the savings when we roll it out further.
Yeah.
Can I just ask for clarification on that, please, Hannah? So you're relying on the carer who goes in to record their time. Do you also rely on the person they're going to care for to record the time, or someone else who's in the house? So how do you ensure you get the accurate recording of times?
It's actually quite a smart system. So I think it works that each individual person would have a unique code. So when the carer goes to the client's house, there's a free phone number they're able to phone from that person's house to sign them in. When they're leaving that person's house, they have to use the same number and code to sign out on their way out. So it has to happen in the property.
So they use the household as...
It's a free phone. If the person doesn't allow them to use the phone, there's another bit of equipment can go into someone's house so their private phone isn't being used. But there's no charge to the client. If they agree that they can use the phone, it's a free phone number. So they dial in, they dial out. If they don't agree with the phone, there's another bit of kit that they're able to do exactly the same from that house. So it's quite a smart kit that's used across lots of London boroughs. It also really improves, it can improve the quality of the care that the person's getting. Because we get a true reflection, a live report, daily or weekly, exactly the time that carer went. Because if we commissioned it at a certain time of the day, we know the carer's gone, we know the time they've left, and we can see daily, weekly, monthly reports on that person live. And so it's a very good system so that we can be assured that the person is getting the care they want, and we only pay for the care that we are getting. So it's good for the person so that it can improve the care, but also we're only paying actually for what's being provided.
Okay. Stephen, that's your question on that page.
I have a question on page 29.
Is there anyone that's got so 29? Yep, which one?
CA 89. It looks as if we're proposing to save roughly half of the budget. That's the correct interpretation?
So, shall I just give you a little bit of background so I can set the context? So at the moment there's 2 main providers of older people daycare within the borough. One provision belongs to the London Borough of Merton. It's our older persons day centre called Eastways.
On top, we have provision in Eastways for up to 40 places a day. Alongside that, we have a block contract with a private provider based at Woodlands for another 50 places a day. What we've been looking at is demand and supply. So what we know is that older people now tend to prefer other types of community activities like visiting lunch clubs rather than an older person's day centre. So we've seen our numbers drop quite intensively. I think the take up of Eastways at the moment is down to 20.
It's 20.
20
Eastways, and it's, I think it's 25 at Woodlands.
And 25 at Woodlands out of 40. So we've got an oversupply. We're also seeing that older people are remaining more active, and the ones that do require that level of being picked up in transport, taken to a day centre for the day, are more geared now towards 24-hour care. So the old provision of day care, the model is outdated almost for the client group that now come in contact with services. So what we want to do is we want to look at the provision at Eastways, we want to look at the provision at Woodlands, because actually between the two it's something like 90 places a day, we're using half of that. And we want to work with our block contract in relation to looking at what activities within Woodlands, looking at the activities within Eastways, but also looking wide around into the community, which is around the provision of day support and activities within lunch clubs and other providers within Merton. And I think the value of our contract is
just under
£500,000.
And it's been not utilised. That's the important point. It's the Woodlands contract's just under £500,000. It's about 25 people going a day, and we are paying for 40. We used to be paying for 50, so we've reduced that down to 40. We want to reduce it down more, and we want to then review, because our borough provision, 30 places, only 20 people are going a day. The important thing about this borough, there are 20 lunch clubs, voluntary social clubs, lunch clubs in the borough provided by the voluntary sector. They provide, just to show you the activity that goes through that, 760 meals are provided a week in those lunch clubs. They're very popular, they're very dynamic. People want to go there. They don't want to go to our traditional old-fashioned day centres. People don't want that anymore. They want to go to these lunch clubs that are designed for them. They're run by them, designed for them. They're for all different client groups, types of people. They are very dynamic and popular. That's why more people are going there and less people are going to our day centres.
So I understand what you just said, I think, and it seems to me, and I appreciate there's a review to be done, and one doesn't want to prejudge that review, but it seems to me we have two centres and they're both kind of 50% utilised, and therefore somewhere there may be a decision to be made about whether we still continue with two centres, both 50% utilised, or we only have one centre. Because of what you've just explained about the lunch clubs, we actually have no centres. Now, as I say, the review has to be done, and that will be in hand in the coming financial year. But I'm just wondering, given the size and magnitude of this and the potential risk of reputation to the council, loss of reputation to the council, whether this committee had a view on what possible outcomes we might favour. I'd be interested to hear what colleagues' views might be on this and these other issues.
So I think there's two pieces to that. And it's about the offer. It's not about one or the other. I would be very cautious in saying that we would do a review that would reach with no provision, because we know we have got a cohort of Merton older borough residents that do like that traditional daycare, that do like the picking up in the morning. We also know we've got a group of carers that rely on that daycare provision. So again, it's about that menu of options. If I'm an older person living in the borough, what best suits me? And if my choice is a luncheon club where I get my activity, I do my chair-based exercise, I can have my hair done, and I've got capacity to make those decisions, then we should be able to ensure that that choice is achieved. If we've got an older person who is more disabled and more in need, and the carer is completely reliant on that daycare, which is more intensive, then I think we have to be very, very open to what our local offer is. But I think for me there is an issue about supply and demand. What we can't have is contracts with private providers worth over $500,000 that's actually we're not utilising to its full potential. But we do have a facility that is council owned, that is run by the council, and again it's looking at that activity and data. But I suppose what I don't want to get us to a place is that it's got to be that or it's got to be that, because I think it's got to be a menu of options.
So I think you're asking for flexibility in terms of your decision making. An obvious question is, John's talked about the provision from voluntary sector organisations, community-based. Is that evenly dispersed throughout the borough, or is there a tendency for it to be concentrated in one part?
It is very evenly dispersed across the borough. We recently did a review of all of the lunch clubs. That's why I know there's 20. That's why I know there's 768 meals a week. It's very evenly dispersed from Pollard's Hill all the way across to Wimbledon. And it's so dynamic. A new lunch club just opened up this week or last week. So it's a really thriving community that people want.
Does that answer your questions? Because I mean, from my perspective, that flexibility sounds like so rather than us as a committee being prescriptive about how this should be achieved, I think we should have that flexibility that officers feel is desirable.
I agree with you, Chair, and I think flexibility is important. What I would therefore like to propose is a motion which says that as a result of the review, we would at least maintain one of those day centres, either Eastways or Westlands. It's up to the review to obviously decide whether one day centre should close or not, but I'm saying the motion is that we must retain one of those day centres.
Sorry, I think on that, absolutely not. We can't prejudge a review. It's entirely possible that the review might say, let's go down from 2 day centres to one, and that one might be on a different site than we've got already. You can't say it has to be one or both of the two existing ones. We don't know what the review is going to send up, and I wouldn't like in any way this committee to start prejudging what a review that's hasn't even started yet is going to come up with. We should, as in the normal way of things, let the review look at the services, come back with recommendations, and then we scrutinise it afterwards. I don't think we can prejudge any kind of review, never. No.
Okay. Any other views?
I just think if we said we've got to have one of the two, it makes it very prescriptive and takes away the flexibility and the need that rises. And being involved with one club, we don't call it a lunch club, because it's activities and visits and outings. Situations change, and you have to be flexible. And I think it's just tightening it too much. But I think it's important there are facilities that will be acceptable to the people who are going to use them.
Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Having been a council in Pollard's Hill and work within both centres, I used to work at Eastways many years ago, and now Pollard's Hill, because I'm one of the council there. Both centres are important, both centres needed, and under no circumstances we should think about closing anything, because when you think about it, the older people are using them, they're very accessible to them, and also, they get their daily meal. Some, of course, haven't got the facility or the strength to prepare their own meal at home. And going to the centres is very important. I mean, I don't know if I'm talking out, a different version, but I think both of them are important.
Sorry, can I just confirm, it's just going back again because I think you've raised some incredibly important points around making sure that older people have access to activities but also access to a hot meal in some occasions. And from what we're looking at the moment, that's a menu of options either provided through a lunch club or through a day centre. So I'm assuming when you're referring to Pollard's Hill, you're referring to the offer of the luncheon clubs in Pollard's Hill.
Luncheon club activities,
yes,
everything. Because Pollard's Hill, the club it served so many people.
Yes, it does.
Although I appreciate some colleagues are not keen, I would still like to formally propose my motion that we keep either Eastways or Woodlands.
Okay, cast all those in favour? And those against?
Could you please record my name?
Will do. What's your next one, or does anyone else have an issue that they'd like to open? I mean, we'll give you a fair crack. But I guess what we could do is go ask who. Let's take the next page where somebody has an issue or a question. What's your?
Now on page 29.
Right. Yep.
So it's on the section of CH90.
Right. Yep.
I'd like some clarification of why mental health and learning disabilities seem to be overlapping. I understand this is a review, which is kind of linked to my first initial question. I'm feeling rather unsettled about the fact that this is a review and that we can't scrutinise the review and then the decision. And this is, I mean, reading this, to have to be frank, was depressing. And I'm very worried about the people who are going to be affected by this, and the vulnerable people in particular. Could you give us some clarification on this particular point to start off with? Why is there an overlap with mental health and learning disabilities? What does this actually mean? Is this a cut initially? Is this really what you're saying? Because I can't really understand how this is a saving. Where will these people be helped? Are they going to be helped within their home? It's just very vague. And that's what I'm very concerned about. There's a real lack of detail here. Thank you.
What might be helpful if I can refer you to the equality analysis to pursue it when you get an opportunity, because there is the detail in there. But let me set the context for you. There's two pieces of national policy being driven at the moment. One is called Transforming Care. And what we know with London authorities and London boroughs in particular, that the majority of people with a profound complex learning disability is often placed out of the borough they were born and raised in because the provision is not in borough. A lot of those placements are either in Cornwall, Scotland, Dorset. So you've got a young person in this borough that has been born in this borough that knows the local parks, local swimming pool, the local area, and when they hit 18 and their needs increase, they are taken out of this borough. And that is wrong. That is fundamentally wrong. So the challenge for each of our local authorities within London nationally is what is our local provision and offer in Merton for these young people. And that's for us. It's not about the costs, it's about us working with the market to try and enable better provision in the borough of Merton for people that is taken out of this borough and has been kept in care for a number of years, without sometimes a review maybe once a year because of the distance there that has to be travelled, but also family access maybe once a year. So that's the bit around learning disability. It's not the overlap, it's just two national pieces of policy at the moment. The other piece is around people with long-term mental health challenges, issues that previously had been sectioned and were subject to what we call a section 117, which means that a lot of these people have been in 24-hour residential, nursing accommodation, mental health placements for a very, very long time. And we're working with our partners in South West London and St George's Mental Health Trust as part of the South London piece of work to review all those cases. Should they still be on Section 117s? Can they be repatriated home? So it's not a review of just the system, it's a review of individual cases, and I want to be really clear on that. And I've given you some percentages in the equality assessment. It's shocking actually the number of people we send out of the borough. We're not unique, Merton is not unique, every other London borough is facing this challenge. Because working with our providers and the market, what they're telling us is property is so expensive in London that they're not able to create these homes units closer to London to bring people back. But we believe with the changes in technology, access to DFG grants, we can do a lot more to enable people to remain within the borough of Merton if that is their choice and subject to that individual assessment.
So, I hope you don't mind me asking this, but are you guaranteeing that nobody will lose out in getting care for their mental health needs and their learning disabilities?
So these people...
So I didn't say that in the microphone.
So these
we don't guarantee that they won't be losing out.
Okay. So this refers to people that is already receiving care and support within adult social care, irrespective of whether it's a mental health problem or a learning disability. What this does is review the most appropriate placement for them. We're talking about quite a high level of need, so there will always be care needed. It's again going back to that, what's the offer of care? Is it a long-term placement in Cornwall, or is there something better we can do with families to bring people home? But it is individual. You can't take not all of these people because they've been in the care system, some of them probably for a very, very long time. So you can't just cut off care. They will always need a level of support and care. But right now our offer is so limited to these people, and we know, especially around learning disability, that people have ended up in care for a very, very long time. John?
No, legally it is about improving independence as well, and trying to make people independent, and legally bringing them back to their families and the communities they know. It isn't right that we in the other London boroughs place so many people away. East Sussex, Devon, Brighton, Eastbourne, we're placing people across the whole borough. Families don't get to see their loved ones once or twice a year. So this is about getting people, if they want to come back here, and having that provision and offer in the borough.
Can I just add one thing that I think is really important? When the Care Act was introduced, part of the duties that was put on local authorities was to work with the market in trying to develop some of this resource. Because what we find is we're often at the mercy of these large providers, and they can charge us what they want because the provision is just not there. So we're not in a position where we negotiate fees because they will just tell us move the person if you don't want to pay the fees. So what we're trying to do in a way as well is meet that duty that we can try and stimulate the market locally, and that's kind of some of the challenge in this, is trying to work with. We have some very good local providers, and it's how do we support them and enable them to meet that higher need. So they're doing the low level need, but it really is that high in need. So there is a need for the market to shift, because right now it's very much dominated by a handful of providers that do this very specialised care and are able to charge London boroughs really quite astonishing prices per week.
Thank you, Chair. I think the proposal in principle is great, it's fantastic, but we want to encourage keeping those that we can in placements in the borough. But I would assume that we're already doing everything that we can to keep people in the borough. So I think my question is that if we're limiting the number of people accessing out-of-area placements, does that mean that the demand will go up, that waiting lists will go up? And also you mentioned that you wanted to sort of enable local providers to almost enhance their offer, but would that also assume that they would need to be investment there as well?
So I think there's something around understanding the demand and understanding the population that lives within Merton that is faced with a learning disability challenge or a mental health issue. So for the younger people coming through in the next 5 years, we can predict that demand. We know exactly how many people coming through the system that will require that high end of care. The other issue here for us that we're doing an in-depth piece of work at the moment that hasn't happened before is the role of health in this. So it's understanding and defining not just the social care need, but the health care need, and looking to joint funding responsibility for some of the cases that is presented to us. And we've actually had quite a success in working with the local CCG in identifying a number of those cases where actually the local authority was picking up the full cost by those reassessment process. No change to the service user's level of care, just a change in the funding stream. So there is a piece of work to be done. I think we can predict some of the demand. We also know that we've got an older population that's with a learning disability that's living longer, and they will require a different type of support and care as they get older. So again, it's looking at our extra care schemes. We've got a lot of provision already that we think with a good piece of analysis work and talking to people, especially people that's living at home now with older carers. We've got a large proportion of the population who actually lives with mum and dad are in their 80s. So we've got to do that piece of work now with them, because what is absolutely critical that doesn't happen is that something happens to mum and dad and that person ends up in long-term care. I mean, that is shocking. And we just really have to do some of that planning now. You can't predict all of these things, but with the numbers we've got at the moment, how many people? 100 and... It's not large numbers. It's just the cost is incredibly high, but our numbers
just over 100.
Just over 100. So we actually can really do some targeted work with that cohort of people. And again, I just wanted to kind of bring people back to the equality assessment. I know there's an awful lot of paper here to read, but I really would kind of urge you, because we did some really detailed work on this EQIA, because it is such a sensitive subject, and it's a subject that worries people, and especially worry older carers. And it will take a big piece of work. There is nothing going to happen overnight. This is going to take us time. We've got to work with families, we've got to work with our providers, and we've got to work with our people that's in the care system at the moment. But just around what we do believe that the impact will be, and we believe this is a positive impact, where we actually give people with disabilities in the environment a choice of whether to live locally or move out.
So do you think we have provision environment?
I think we provision environment, I think it's the wrong type of provision. So I think we're overrun with the low-level provision. So I'll give you an example. We've started to look and develop what shared lives do. They do an amazing piece of work. They have some of the most amazing success stories with people with a mental health disorder. And we had a case a couple of months ago of a gentleman that was discharged from hospital that kept being readmitted from the care home. We took the decision that the care home was too busy, and that was causing the distress leading to the readmissions. And we placed him within a family within Merton under the shared life scheme. He has gone from strength to strength to strength just within that family unit. And that's not a 24-hour big care environment. So it's that matching, it's understanding the need and the assessment. So I think we've got a lot of provision, but we need to work with that provision to make sure it's the right provision, because it's again, low level, medium, high end, and the high end is going to be the challenge because of the adaptations and what's needed within those units. Can I just also say, which is really important, is for those of you that may not know the provision that exists around supported living within the borough. We have some amazing schemes here in Merton. You know, I mentioned Olive Court, it's not the only one. State-of-the-art purpose-built building, and some amazing care and independence for people with learning disability.
The only thing I want to add to that gentleman that Hannah's mentioned, so he's in shared lives, he's improved, he's more independent, and it's at a lesser cost to the borough. So it's a positive for him, but it's also a positive because it is less cost to the borough.
This is amazing. I'm making all these cuts. This is why it's going to be so much better.
So much better.
You're doing a good job anyway in terms of selling these savings.
John, I was going to have to go share life, so apparently she mentioned something.
John, did you want to say? Oh, that was all I had. Sorry, did I miss you, Dave?
Yeah, I think on this generally, we are looking at the council budget as a whole because of central government cuts. We're looking at finding savings in a lot of places, but I think this particular issue falls outside of that because it's one of those examples where we first looked at what the provision is and what we need to do, and it's by happy coincidence that it also saves us money. We're trying to do the right thing first, and we find, oh, it may, and after the review, it's predicted to be not next year, but the year after that we may start saving some money. So it's not an immediate saving, and I don't think I'm confident from hearing from officers that we haven't gone about this and like we need to save some money, we need to cut services. It's like we need to improve services, and it's a happy coincidence that it also saves us money, as with the case of the individual, as was mentioned earlier.
I'd like to move us on. I think we need to get through the business. So, who's got the next? Hands up if you've got the next. Are there any on page? We're on 29. Any on 30? 31? 32. Okay, I've managed to.
Well, for those.
Yep. Okay. So, are there any other issues that you would like to draw our attention to?
I think what I would just like to say is I don't want to underestimate the challenge of social care funding, because it is quite a challenge. And I think we're in a time of uncertainty. We have a provisional settlement. We know where we're going to 2020, and I think that's on good planning in relation to this council. But post 2021, we will need that national direction around the response to adult social care funding in total. So I just wanted to say that's not off the table. It still raises a number of concerns for us, and you'll see that's where some of the gap comes in, is post 2021. Alongside that, we've had the publication of the NHS 10-year plan, and I believe my department sees that, along with a lot of other council departments, as a lost opportunity not to have had the green paper alongside that, because I think a lot of what's in that is dependent on social care funding. We can't just fix one piece, we've got to fix the whole lot, because I think what's in there is absolutely right. It's about safe care, it's about getting people safely out of hospital, it's about early prevention, it's about all the things that we do every day in social care. So I just wanted to remind the panel that we do have big challenges in social care funding post 2021, and that's across the piece. It's not just Merton, but again it is about what we provide now, and really making sure that however big a scale the challenge of the funding, the saving plan is, that we do the right thing for borough residents, and we do the safe thing, especially for people that is reliant, it's services for people on the delivery of care. Thank you.
I suppose it was just whether there was anything within the service plan, so the large A3 sheets that people had any queries on.
Any questions on? Do you want a question on what we do?
Just stop at page 32, Chair, and I want to ask a question on page 28.
Right.
Yes, I have a question about
Right. 38. And the code?
The code.
CH20.
This appears to be.
That was as well.
It appears to be staff savings not realised. So the original was for 433 of staff savings. It seemed to have swapped in taxis and transport of 150,000. Not realised 183. So it seems to me that of our 433 original post staff savings, we've only made £100,000 worth of staff savings. I'm just really wondering how that arises, because it seems like quite a significant misstatement of the saving originally.
So, for CH20 on the staffing, this was one of the savings that had been put forward in previous years. And one part about putting savings forward, replacing savings and new savings, is analysing and looking at what already has been put forward. And as a directorate, we had to take a decision to look back at the savings that already had been taken out of frontline posts, and to look at how safely can you deliver these services, improving the quality of what you do if you haven't got the staffing numbers to ensure that that work is carried out in a safe way and in a professional way to meet that statutory function. So we took the decision to replace that specific part of the statement that had been realised through 3 other statements that we identified that we believed would have a lesser negative impact on the delivery of what we do in community and housing. And that saving was specifically replaced by CH55, 88, and there is another one, 35.
Is that your question as well, or is yours slightly
mine's a little bit more to do with the people. So
your mic's not on.
Is it still not working? Sorry, I'm rubbish at this microphone. So it's more about the people themselves. Reducing the staff. I'm sure you considered this, so I'm just going to ask the question. Is there any legal implication to this? Would it be unlawful, or is there any risk of it being unlawful? When I consider my own position as a teacher, I know that if teaching staff were reduced, it would be unlawful under certain circumstances, for example, risk to children's safety, etc. This kind of goes over that kind of line as well. I am worried about the fact that these people are going to be made redundant. How is that going to happen? How are we going to make sure that it's done in a way that's safe, that doesn't impact the people that we're hoping, we don't want to impact the people that they are looking after. And as well as that, the staff themselves, these are particularly important people, aren't they? And they have given up a lot of their family time in their life, and they've dedicated a lot of their passion is within this area. You don't get into social work unless you really, really want to. So this is my main concern. It's about the people themselves.
Apologies if I wasn't very clear. So this was a saving that was put forward prior to my several years ago, prior to my taking up the role as Director of Adult Social Care. On review of that saving that was put forward, I share your concerns. Therefore, that saving is now replaced. And
that's what's got the brackets around it. Is
it's the paperwork and how there's a lot in there. So apologies if I wasn't very clear. That will not be happening. Like we had our concerns as well. And you're right. There is a statutory duty certainly on my behalf as your Director of Adult Social Care to ensure that there is adequate staffing to be able to do the work and meet our statutory functions and discharge those functions.
Okay. Next one. Stephen?
I have one final question from me. Lila mentioned that Merton Sill are in council premises. It just suddenly struck me, I was wondering if we were funding Merton Sill in any other ways. But my question actually is there anything in this round of savings that are being proposed either in the Healthier Communities and Older People's Purvey or in another Scrutiny panel's purvey whereby we are proposing a cut in monies to Merton Sill?
So I think what you're referring to is the Strategic Grants Programme, and that's how we fund a lot of our voluntary organisations. We have just awarded an earlier part of that programme, and the second lot is out to tender at the moment, and those bids are starting to come in now. But I'm assuming that would come under under the corporate.
The budget is not being cut; it's being maintained for the next 3 years. But the organisations that may receive the funding may change because they were only getting 3-year funding. That process is now being going through again, and we've worked very closely with MBSC to actually determine the criteria and the evaluation process to determine who then gets the funding.
So I don't think we can, in a competitive tendering process, head officers who should receive the funding, they have a responsibility to get value for money and ensure that the organisation selected can meet the requirements of specifications. We leave that to you and your colleagues to undertake, and we can often wish you well, I think.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on any of these papers or comments? Okay, well, thank you for your explanations, the background and the answers to the questions that members have raised. Thank you for staying so long. Okay, item 7 is the work plan. Can you note that? Well, in that case, that concludes our business. I'd like to thank you all for coming and for your contributions and your questions. And the officers for wish you the rest of the evening.
Thank you.